With his distinctive West Coast swagger and unrivaled energy, Snoop Dogg is revved up and making sure everyone knows how he feels. He's reminding everyone why he's still the rap game's king. Snoop's explosive reaction, which consisted of not only barking but also biting, has raised more questions about who these rappers are and whether he is even clean in this situation. Based on the current situation, it appears that Snoop may have received a dose of his own medicine. For years, Snoop made fun of anyone who even glanced in Trump's direction, but now that he is entering his inner cycle, the same people who once supported him are making sure he doesn't just walk away from this one. Elon Musk is making sure the internet doesn't miss the irony. And people are wondering why Snoop is so charged up and what's up with him. Snoop has been having some difficult nights, and it's beginning to show that he's not just angry, he's hurt, and he's not incorrect when he feels like people are pursuing him, reminding everyone on Instagram that he's black, always black, no matter what is stated. It is difficult to overlook how well coordinated these takedowns feel. The internet has become its own enforcement unit, enlisting fan movements into extensive criticism campaigns, and Snoop is currently in the hot seat. But let's face it, that wasn't what people were upset about. And if he thought that would silence the critics, it did the exact opposite. Overnight, he lost around 600,000 Instagram followers as a result of the fallout. However, losing followers is only one aspect of the story. What really sticks out is the change in the tone of the industry. The same media figures, artists, and cultural voices that once supported Snoop for voicing his opinions are now the ones criticizing him the loudest. If that weren't enough, Trump's presence and entertainment have transformed the entire industry into a battlefield where it's difficult to predict where your alignments will lead. Cardi B has always been outspoken and opinionated, but after Trump was re-elected, she literally lost it and said, "I hate everyone that voted for Donald Trump." Her own supporters then turned against her, accusing her of being too emotional, pushing too hard, and being out of touch. Instead of backing down, she doubled down, almost starting a full-scale conflict with some of her own supporters after labeling them toxic and declaring she was tired of putting up with them. And then there's Ellen DeGeneres, who saw what was coming and didn't even fight. She had previously stated that she would leave if Trump was re-elected, and she did just that. She packed up and sold her estate and a car in the UK with a Porsche. She didn't say anything or participate in discussions. She just deluded. Even Saturday Night Live, a show that spent entire seasons making fun of Trump, had to change things up. After years of ridiculing him, they suddenly turned to sarcasm, acting as though they may have been too harsh on him. One skip even had cast members half-jokingly apologize for firing Trump too soon, as if they knew they contributed to the way this all turned out. If SNL is reversing course, you know something has changed. And now Snoop is stuck in the same mess. Many artists have been forced to play the game, but Snoop is the one being pulled the most. What's really going on here? Is it about holding him accountable? Or is he just another name on the list of people being punished for crossing boundaries? Snoop has been receiving criticism for his performance, but that shouldn't come as a surprise. Elon Musk made sure to highlight the irony by displaying receipts that showed a video of Snoop performing at Trump's crypto ball alongside a clip of his previous anti-Trump tirades. This was done to ensure that the internet took notice. Musk mentioned that, and now that the mood shift is true, it's difficult to. In other words, Snoop just played himself, and the timing couldn't have been worse. This wasn't just about Snoop performing. It was also about how he went from being one of Trump's most vocal critics to voluntarily making money at an event connected to the same person he once called a racist. And Musk wasn't the only person who called him out on his tweet, which caused a full-scale online uproar. Baller alert, and the Shade Room weren't going to let Snoop off easy either. They brought back some of his earlier observations, such as his well-known Instagram tirade in which he blasted musicians for even considering doing a show for Trump. He once stated categorically that any performer rocking with Trump was a sellout. At this point, the internet police went into full-time mode. Twitter users bombarded the timeline with recollections of Snoop's previous remarks, and comments on Instagram were full of variations of "Snoop, you played yourself." Some even claimed that Michelle Obama was more reliable than these rappers because she refused to interact with Trump. Furthermore, some brought up Snoop's past disloyalty in other contexts, claiming that this was just another instance of him switching sides when it was convenient, his tumultuous relationship with Suge Knight, and his erratic support for Kendrick Lamar during the Drake feud. All of this began to pile up in people's thoughts. Musk merely added a laughing emoji, but the internet took it and ran with it. As a result, Snoop found himself in a situation where he never imagined being ridiculed by the same community that he had once been a part of. But the criticism didn't end there. Just wait until you hear what Do Julie and Ana Navarro had to say if you thought Elon was the only well-known person criticizing him. It appears that DL Julie has taken the lead in checking Snoop over this entire situation. It's important to remember that Julie was among the first to criticize Kanye when he began to support Trump. He was equally quick to respond to Snoop, making it clear that his biggest problem isn't the backlash, but rather his refusal to take responsibility. According to Huey, this isn't even about politics anymore. It's about loyalty and consistency. If Snoop had remained silent for all these years, perhaps people would have forgiven him. But after all that shit, no. He said, Snoop needs to take a long, hard look at the man in the mirror. How do you go from being one of the loudest voices against Trump calling out rappers who performed for him to coming away with a check at a Trump-affiliated event? Hooli wasn't angry, he was just disappointed. And Heidi wasn't the only one who spoke on The View. Ana Navarro didn't mince words when she said that Snoop had officially lost all credibility. She called it embarrassing for someone who had spent years portraying himself as too real for politics to flip-flop when the money was right. However, Navarro also noted that this isn't the first time the industry has witnessed this kind of change. She reminded the audience that other artists had been fired for doing the same thing Snoop had just done, and the backlash suddenly became even more intense. At this point, it wasn't just Twitter criticizing him. He was also being attacked on national television. Snoop wasn't the only reason Strays was caught was because, let's face it, we knew this was coming, and other artists who performed at Trump rallies began to feel the heat while he was out here defending himself. Rick Ross, as soon as Snoop took the heat, Nelly and Jewel weren't leaving this unharmed. Before long, the others were drawn in. Country music singer John Rich made sure to call them out first, claiming that they were the same musicians who had previously vowed they would never support Trump and were now receiving payments from his events. In all honesty, he wasn't mistaken. The majority of these musicians would have avoided anything Trump-related only a few years ago. And if John Rich wasn't enough, Sunny Hostin gave her opinion by bringing up Michelle's career, which had all but vanished from the industry. After she performed at Trump's inauguration in 2017, these male rappers are somehow getting away with it. However, the problem is that, similar to Snoop, these comments hit them in the heart, so someone had to answer, and it seems like Nelly didn't fold. He stepped into an interview under pressure and stated that he doesn't give a damn about what others think, making it obvious that this was just business-related and not political. Nelly, Ross, and Jewel were able to brush off the backlash, but Snoop was still deeply involved. The question remains: if anyone isn't shocked by this, it's Suge Knight, who claims that this is just who Snoop has always been. The contradictions keep piling up. In a now famous interview, Snoop implied that Biggie and Diddy were his friends, which didn't sit well with Pac or Sug at the time and created a rift that never completely healed. That was during the height of the East Coast-West Coast War, when Snoop was on death row riding with ST and Tupac. But when things got too real, he was suddenly on the fence. Since then, DZ has never trusted Snoop, especially after the events involving Death Row Records. He has stated in numerous interviews that Snoop's loyalty changes depending on who is in charge. For example, he served as a writer for Death Row, shook hands with Master P and No Limit to save his career, and is currently performing at an event associated with Trump. Jail interview, Suda reaffirmed these allegations, stating unequivocally that Snoop played a role in Tupac's demise. As if that weren't enough, Sue also implied that Snoop warned Daz Dillinger not to go to Vegas the night the Pac was shot because something was going to happen. Now that Snoop and Diddy are suddenly close, Sugg is not buying it. He said that if Snoop truly cared about Pac's legacy, he wouldn't be hanging around with the same people that Pac was at odds with. To make matters worse, Sugg has been outspoken about how Snoop got back on death row, claiming that it was through shady business practices, bankruptcy fraud, and backdoor deals. Based on how this Trump situation unfolded, Sugg might have had a point. But if you thought that was the end of the criticism, you would be mistaken. Joe Budden and his team's thoughts on Snoop's most recent incident were not surprising. In their opinion, Snoop should have anticipated this from the minute he took the stage. Joe used a clever but harsh strategy, reminding the audience that Snoop had been one of Trump's harshest critics for years, disparaging any black performer who even thought about doing so. And now, he was making money at an event affiliated with Trump. He claimed that Snoop's issue wasn't just the criticism, but also the fact that he pretended that no one would notice. However, Budden's crew wasn't surprised since, to them, this was morality over commerce. They brought up Snoop's close connections to the cryptocurrency community and pointed out that the event he played at wasn't just any concert. Rather, it was a Bitcoin-funded event that probably matched his financial interests. A Charlem, in his own words, the god at Power 106, reminded everyone that the hypocrisy is the real problem, not just the performance. For playing at Trump's first inauguration, Michelle's career was ruined, but Snoop, Nelly, and others are only receiving criticism. It was difficult to overlook the double standard. Next up is Reggie Rye, who has made a name for himself by revealing intimate secrets about Snoop's past and his belief that Snoop knew precisely what he was doing and is only upset because people are pointing it out to him. Then, declaring that this was not about Trump, Reggie branded Snoop a sellout and a politician. It concerns Snoop's tendency to play both sides when it suits him, and Stephen A. Smith, as usual, had a direct opinion. He accepted the criticism and stood up for Snoop and Nelly, claiming that artists ought to be allowed to conduct business without fear of retribution. Now that the harm has been done, the true question is how Snoop can recover from this, or if he really cares, as his silence is now speaking louder than his justifications ever could. Although Snoop may have believed this to be simply another performance, the fallout is showing that this is not the case. The internet has been there, have been countless industry voices, and even old allies are watching his every move. Now, the true question is, did Snoop set himself up for failure? Or is this backlash just another instance of selective outrage? Is it about holding artists accountable, or is there a double standard at work? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below, because this discussion is far from over. If you thought this was crazy, wait until you see what's coming next. I promise you won't want to miss it. Click the following video to to take a look for yourself.